Maduro might start talking in American courts and, of course, could say a bit too much about his friends and partners, including the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. Otherwise, how else can one explain the extremely cautious reproach towards the United States of America in the speech of the Russian Federation's permanent representative at the UN Security Council? Nebenzia, which in reality boiled down to the idea that Maduro and his wife should be released. Just release Maduro. It's not a problem that you kidnapped him, that you declared hegemony in the Western Hemisphere. Release Maduro. Here's this fragment. Take a look.
The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, and his wife are in the United States, and as we know today, they're in New York. We propose and call on the American leadership to immediately release the legitimately elected president of an independent state and his spouse.
It feels like Nebenzia just showed up to go through the motions, completely lacking any enthusiasm or spark in his eyes. He could have really latched onto this whole story properly. To talk about how Russia will now act the same way. What now? A hegemon in the East, then in the Eastern Hemisphere. No, free Maduro, free him. And it seems to me that this is exactly where the essence of this whole story lies for the Russian Federation. If there are traitors in Maduro's inner circle, such traitors could also be in Putin's entourage. One needs to be cautious, not about whether you are there. Trump could have his special alpha unit kidnap him. That's not what this is about. It's about how deeply someone is integrated into the network of the Kremlin's inner circle. We've already seen Venezuela in the Kremlin, for example, from the side of the Central Intelligence Agency. Does Maduro know about this? What does Maduro know about Putin that could be used by Trump and his administration against the Russian dictator? These are actually very complicated things. Right now, no one is writing about them yet. Everyone is writing about Trump's next conquest, Greenland. But this point is being overlooked. They're also really glossing over it. One Kremlin Telegram channel, Tabakaka, writes about this, so that what happened with Maduro doesn't happen. Putin's inner circle is being checked for traitors. So it seems the search has already begun. Sources in the presidential administration who since 2024 have been actively warning about threats from internal agencies. For all of Russia and personally for Vladimir Putin, they believe that particularly difficult times are coming now. And here is a quote. It would be easier to make money. These citizens are ready to do anything for their own benefit, even betray and threaten the president. Now, against the backdrop of what happened in Venezuela, they may become more active. There is a real threat to Vladimir Vladimirovich, which needs to be spoken about loudly and publicly. But believe me, we will do everything to prevent what happened to our Venezuelan ally, Maduro. So what now? So what happened? We all understand perfectly well, but in the coverage, for example, where Telegraph saw opportunities here for Putin instead. On the contrary, opportunities, despite the fact that Maduro, who can share information and how deeply he understands the situation in order to integrate someone even further into Putin's inner circle, there is a positive side in that Trump, according to journalists, where Telegraph behaves as if Trump is Putin. In other words, the Putinization of Trump is taking place. Trump elevates himself above the system of legal oversight and makes decisions about special operations like the one he carried out with Venezuela without, for example, coordinating with Congress or passing this decision through the United Nations Security Council. This is exactly what is demanded of Russia, why it launched the so-called special military operation against the sovereign country of Ukraine, violating its territorial integrity, seizing territories, and supposedly saving some people of Donbass without first consulting with the people of Donbass themselves or considering how all this would look with the UN Security Council. Why didn't Russia do this? And now it turns out this argument is starting to fade away, to recede into the background. And in fact, Russia is fine with that. This side of the coin is quite interesting, as it now gives Putin the right to, perhaps behind closed doors, and journalists from Telegraph are also writing about this, perhaps to negotiate with Donald Trump about spheres of influence. Okay, you want the Western Hemisphere, you want, say, that oil, Venezuela, and all those natural resources would remain under your control, and no one would interfere there. We, for example, won't interfere there. We're even ready to give up Cuba and our influence there, well, for the sake of good relations with my brother Trump, why not do it? But then you don't interfere in Ukraine, don't interfere in the Baltic countries. All of that is ours. We want to dominate the Eastern Hemisphere, and not even all of it. Russia is not a Zionist country. That's probably how Putin and his circle think. That's how it is. We have historical ties with many famous Jews. They are our literary geniuses. Yes, but Israel, this topic is purely for the United States. Do you want to do something in the Eastern Hemisphere? The Middle East, sure, we can take part there a little, but nothing more than that. But as for Ukraine, stay away from the Balkan countries. We'll handle things ourselves here. Well, that's more or less the kind of rhetoric we're seeing now. Thank you. And Putin really, really likes this guy, the one who has a somewhat similar type, Stephen Miller. He's a prominent figure from Donald Trump's former administration. He explicitly stated that in the harsh realities of the real world, those individuals who possess significant power are undeniably the ones who ultimately rule. And this was his contextual response to journalists' questions about Greenland. Greenland, which obviously falls within the sphere of interest of the United States, not only as a country of the Western Hemisphere, so to speak, but also as a country that is supposed to become yet another state of the United States of America. They've already drawn a map here, right? It's called Trump's Next Targets. Greenland, as you can see. Canada, Mexico, Colombia, Panama, Cuba, and also Iran. There are protests happening in Iran right now. Trump has promised that he can easily help the protesters overthrow Khamenei and everyone else. And there are already rumors that Khamenei has made a deal with Putin to escape to the Russian Federation. That's the local Ayatollah, just to remind you. So these countries marked in red, these are the ones Trump mentioned that he really likes, and they shouldn't just be in the sphere of influence. They should actually be part of the United States of America, just like that. Right now, it sounds fantastic, but regarding Greenland, information and impressions are unexpectedly spreading. It's as if there's some kind of declassification going on, something is happening. In other words, the United States is presenting it as rumors that America wants to annex Greenland, but in reality, these are not just rumors. And The Economist writes about this. They published a big article, by the way, which is dedicated to this very issue of Greenland. It's worth quoting here. So these are not rumors at all, not hearsay. American officials have actually discussed the possibility of offering the island a so-called treaty of free association. That's how it is. You see, it's hysterical. Such important treaties can apply to small sovereign countries located in the vast Pacific Ocean region. These significant treaties of free association specifically allow the United States Armed Forces to operate freely and without restriction in the participating countries, providing numerous additional benefits such as extensive economic aid and enhanced security cooperation, among other crucial provisions. No customs duties on trade. That's the story. And now, according to these American officials, the people of Greenland will eventually have to decide what they want. And this guy I already mentioned, Stephen Miller, he says that no special military operation is being considered at all, because imagining someone fighting against the US military, like the forces of the Kingdom of Denmark, that will never happen. That's not even being discussed. It will be voluntary. Some kind of agreement is being considered today. By the way, today there is a statement from Great Britain, which is rather inconsistent. At the UN Security Council, where it wasn't Benzi I showed you, but Starmer, the Prime Minister of Britain, who stated that he supports the United States. And this action regarding Maduro and his wife, that's normal, because he's a person who turned the country into a cartel. And she herself, with this cartel, was fighting. So it's a failed state, essentially. That is a country where the institutional state has ceased to exist. And Starmer says, okay. But at the same time, today Starmer signed documents, a joint statement of the European Union, in which he called Greenland a country whose people have the right to decide their own future, and the right to vote belongs to Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark. That's roughly how it sounds, meaning we're here with you, but here, without you, we shouldn't spread this any further. Greenland is not a cartel, stop, stop, stop. But obviously, Putin likes all of this, as I already mentioned. So in exchange, for example, for Maduro's release, well, for example, for instance, Putin could say, how about we don't touch Maduro over there? Whether to deport him or put him under electronic, not electronic, oh Lord, the electric chair, which he could face under certain articles of American law. Or, for example, it could be arranged so that he serves a few years or maybe a few months or maybe just like that. Let's say, as someone who no longer decides anything, he could follow Yanukovych's path and go to Rostov, for instance. And we won't judge you for that anymore regarding Greenland. And that way, we'll keep each other's secrets. Well, at least that's the impression you get. I understand that this might sound like a conspiracy theory right now, but really, what in this world could still surprise you? After helicopters over Caracas? I don't know.